The His Girl Friday podcast is brought to you in part by Messenger Fellowship, living the kingdom, fulfilling the call, proclaiming the truth. What's cooking, y'all? This is Cameron Fry with His Girl Friday. Thank you for tuning in on this eve of Veterans Day 2018. Cutting this at 5:30, and I know it's been a while. It's been several weeks. In fact, I haven't checked the log. It may have been over a month since I cut the last pod here. So, sincere apologies. I know it's been a crazy year, but in this case, Liz and I are still adjusting to this new children's pastoral role at our church. We're trying to get some things with Fry Freelance off the ground, so not trying to layer the excuses, but simply trying to give some context as to why some His Girl Friday initiatives have been pushed to the curb, or put on the back burner, I should say, to go with some of the cooking metaphors. And in, what's cooking, kind of a tribute to the season we're in and about to enter, rather, with Thanksgiving just a week and a half away. Crazy, right? So tonight, like I mentioned, I'm not going to take a whole lot of time. I don't have a whole lot of fresh things to discuss. It's, not only have we had those Fry Freelance and pastoral gigs going on, but there's been some retreats and some getaways with Messenger Fellowship, who sponsors these podcasts, by the way. So there's been some travel involved, some light travel. So this is not going to be based off a certain post, which is the norm. It's just me talking to you and just kind of giving a life update, as well as some follow-up on You and Me Forever, having recently wrapped that book up. So let's start with kind of where Liz and I are at right now. I guess the best place to start is with Fry Freelance and some of the projects we're trying to nail down. With the holidays just around the corner, we are reaching out to churches in our area, offering some creative and administrative packages that center on facilitating weekly sermons as podcasts, social media management, admin support, procedural development, content, etc. So we're hoping to score some projects and work side by side with church. The end goal is to disciple people, to counsel them, to encourage them, to just help them in their journey with Christ. It's not that complicated. We ultimately want to nurture and massage and speak life to the heart, but we know that there are many different avenues that we must take to get there, especially since a lot of the contact communication are with strangers, people getting to know us. This is a new thing, and so sometimes it just takes a while to get something new off the ground. We feel like we're flying, but and we've done the V2 rotate, for all you pilots out there. We're 10 feet off the ground, so we're kind of flying, but not. That's kind of just not only how we feel with Fry Freelance, but in life right now. This has been a year, just a lot of change and a lot of freshness and a lot of new, just transition and beginning new things. It's just, life is so much different now than it was at this time last year. Last year, we didn't even have Everly in the fold. We were a month and a half away from labor. But so there's a lot of obviously personal change. We're still adapting to being a family of 4. And by the way, Everly is officially crawling now. Last time I cut a pod, she was not doing that yet. She had just started to kind of climb and support herself, like, next to a bed or side or couch. So Everly's growing fast. Caden is a bundle of joy and energy, we'll just say that. But his sweet, sensitive heart comes out when he's in public and when he's on mission. So, yeah. And speaking of mission, Liz and I are on multiple missions right now, and we're just getting used to each one in stride. I guess a common denominator between this year and last is, I've mentioned the bucket metaphor before. And that is, a lot of times, God has these different buckets, and they could represent different assignments. or even passions, and he's depositing a little bit in each of them at a time. It's not just like he's overflowing one at one specific time and then it spills out. I mean, for some of you could relate to that, but for us it's just a little bit in this bucket, a little bit in that bucket, a little bit in this bucket. We're still trying to, I still have to work a day job by day, and Liz has, does her virtual assisting with a speaker lab at home while watching the kids. So really, long story short, there's never a dull moment. So that's just a little taste of where we are. If you happen to know, if you're listening to this and you happen to know of any church organization, we're not just limiting our services, our consulting services to churches. We feel like our strengths cater to that demographic, to that audience. However, we're trying to reach out to both the sacred and the secular, and I know that there is one of the guys at my church. He's a property manager, and he might be outsourcing some work to us as part of our freelance project. So just to give you an idea of some of the things that we're looking into, we're not specifically attuned to just the church side of things. So, all right. So I want to talk a little bit about You and Me Forever. I kind of referenced the book in my last pod, and I got to the first few chapters. But I finished the book in time since, and just a couple of things I want to share on it. First of all, I love Francis and Lisa Chan. Some of you listening to this know who I'm talking about. If not, you might want to just Google You and Me Forever, the book, or maybe something like Crazy Love or something that he's written in the past. He's well known in most Christian circles, regardless of whatever denomination you're affiliated with. And the whole concept, the premise of the book is marriage in light of eternity, and not just your marriage relationship, but family relationships and how they affect culture and the world around us, even work. Just seeing everything really in light of eternity. But he talks about the marital relationship, and I don't want this pod to be just a book review. I do want to the foundation may be just that, a book review, but I want to spin it off into something that could challenge us. And I don't want to sound critical. It's not like I disagreed with the content, because I really believe it was God-breathed and Scripture-based. And whatever I write, really anything that I say or write on to be both those things. So the foundation is set in that regard. That said, I think it's important to note the experiences of the author. Like when we get a book, I think it's really important to see where the writer and author has been, because that's going to help give you context on the author's context and his paradigm and worldview. And I was reminded of that reading this book with Francis Chan. I've followed him for most of this decade, so I get where he's coming from. His reality is he's on the road a lot. He's traveling, has a lot of gigs. He's not home with his family that often. He really tries to capitalize on those moments, those precious moments that he has, and I feel like he does a really good job with that. I'm not here to critique his role as an earthly father and just the skills that go with that. I'm not here to assess him, but I am here to say that there are some connections I can make to Francis's kids. He mentions them in several times throughout the book, just moments of learning, moments of discipline, moments of grace, moments of of humility and learning just how to be a dad, and teaching whether the parents are right, or even the times when the kids are right and they say something that's like, whoa, that's actually right on. That the Spirit was in that. So it's a little different for me than most, perhaps, because Francis and my dad have several things in common, and I don't want this to sound Freudian, or just like this is some like you guys at the Honors are like a shrink in this case, and I'm just talking to like I'm your patient or something. That's not the direction I want to go in at all. But one of the I don't know if it was a theme, but just one of my immediate takeaways is just the whole idea, the concept of being on mission with God. And Francis, he really pushes the reader to make sure that our love for God is so much greater than our love for anything else. That there's this huge gap between 1 and 2. We grow up thinking, all right, we love God, we love others, we love ourselves. That's post-joy. Jesus, others, you. We learned that acronym in church circles growing up. Well, it's easy to love, whether it's elements of the world. For me, it's really easy to love my family in a way that it flirts with idolatry. I guess just kind of the chase and being honest. I don't feel like my love for my family is at that level, but I do think it flirts with it sometimes. I so love my kids. I so love being a dad. I so love being a husband and being able to learn the kind of love God has for me, being able to be a median, a filter, a reflection, whatever you want to say. I mean, I love that as part of my identity. And yet, how easy is it to put the gift above the giver? It's one of the easiest things if we're not careful. It's just that's the whole reason we need to have a daily walk with the Lord, because it's just part of the necessary calibration, if you will. I don't think it's really an option. I mean, so many people like, well, do I have to read my Bible every day or pray every day? Well, no, but I mean, if it's not a regular discipline, there is going to be kind of you're tethering to word as an anchor of truth. It kind of, I've seen it in my own life where it kind of wanes a little bit, and sometimes if I'm not careful, like it's a very sneaky thing, because it's not necessarily, it doesn't strike us as a bad thing, but just the dependency on family to kind of meet some needs. Because I usually, I'll come home from work, and usually days are long, and you get back and you just want to just rest in the jacuzzi of peace with fam. And so it doesn't always happen, because sometimes you enter into the exact opposite, which is chaos, and it's frustrating. But yeah, just being completely reliant upon Jesus is big for Francis. It's big for me. But it's easier said than done. And so, kind of as just branching off from that, Francis is really big on, if you're not being on mission with God, if that's a secondary thing, or it's not a priority, then you're doing parenting, marriage wrong. Like, there, just in the same way there should be this great love for God that's greater than anything else, the being on mission with God should kind of reflect that love you have for him. And then as a result, it's almost like he's suggesting we should be away from our family members. I'm not trying to put words in his mouth, but it's kind of like, if we're not doing something that pertains to being on mission with God, then we're kind of missing the mark in some way, or at least it's how it feels. And this is again not a review. This is just how things have struck me. So kind of take it or leave it. I'm not saying that my words here are truth, 100% accurate. I'm here really to sound things out and talk things out. I wasn't satisfied personally in how Francis defined being on mission with God. He alludes to it quite a bit. And I think for him, it's getting out and discipling people and, having the heart of an evangelist and reaching out to people. And, I get that, for him, I mean, he's adopted people. He's adopted spiritual orphans, even some little orphans, into his home for seasons. And his heart of generosity is amazing. And I'm blown away by that. And I want to grow in my generosity for other people. But being on mission with God looks so different for a lot of people. And where I've been and where His Girl Friday's connected to, where Friday Freelance is connected to, kind of our baby this year has been marketplace ministers, those who, they're local and they're anchored here, not just church, but in work. And maybe they only can get out because of work, or maybe, it's just the other times it's just they're in that posture of rest and they've been vacationing, or just trying to get away to recalibrate, maybe retreating with the Lord, spending time with family in the process. And, my dad is very similar to Francis in this way. He traveled a lot. He was a road warrior for years before he became a senior pastor and was operating out in a local church role. And growing up, I mean, he was on the road up until my junior year of high school. So a lot of development, and he was gone, a lot of those elementary and middle school years. he'd be gone up to 30 weekends a year. And he was home during the week, but there just wasn't a lot of interface. In fact, it got to the point where I missed him so badly. It kind of flipped on its head when I was in high school. It's like I kind of felt more at peace and at ease when he was gone, because that was the reality I was used to. And I felt abandoned. And so it's kind of like, in a weird way, I felt secure, because it's just like, go do your thing, because I've learned to be comfortable without you around. So again, not trying to get too caught up in this, but I just say this context. We're talking about the book here, and I know for a lot of us, being on mission with Christ is more of a local thing. There's going to be global opportunities, for some of us international opportunities. It all boils down to calling, our original design, purpose. What is God's purpose for us, including vocation. And I'm just saying, a lot of us are not going to wear the same shoes that Francis has, and so it'll look different. Some of us, we're business owners, or we're corporate. There's opportunities each day to love on our colleagues and those who are lost, those who are broken, who religious, legalistic, backslidden, whatever. I don't know what the breakdown is, but maybe 95+% of people are not doing the type of things that Francis is doing. And he represents a certain demographic. I guess what I'm trying to say is, God doesn't forsake us, and we shouldn't forsake our families for mission. There has to be this divide. Yes, like we have to love God, so much more than we love anything or anyone else, because we actually love those around us better by loving God so much more. I get that. There's not a forsaking element here, but I almost feel like he is teetering on that edge a little bit, where you have to leave things behind. And that is, I get the scripture where it's like, you're not fit to be a follower if you let the dead bury their dead, or if anyone loves her father or mother more than you're not fit. I get all that. At the same time, I don't believe that you have to forsake or abandon or withdraw. I think it's really tough when you're a road warrior, as I like to call, because I want to respect and honor people who travel a lot. I think it's easy to come back. Like, there's this disorientation that never quite gets resolved. And maybe Francis knows how to do that. I felt like I didn't learn enough how to bridge the gap. Like, say that I enter into a season where I'm on the road a lot, and I have to be, and it's just what God's called me to, and I'm on mission with Him. That's great. And I come back, and how do you make up for, I know that it's like we shouldn't view things with the paradigm of, I got to make it for lost time. God will redeem that, and He will multiply things tenfold. It's like sometimes we don't just tithe money. We tithe time, we tithe energy. Have a separate topic for another day, but so in all things we trust God with everything that is within us. He's given us every reason to trust Him, that believe in Him, and He's given us everything for goodness and godliness. I know a lot of us know that. At the same time, we can't overdo it in the sense that we forsake or retreat, or we just compartmentalize. I think it's so easy to compartmentalize. And even if we're talking about, we're thinking along healthy lines, like, all right, God, how do I grow deeper with you? How do I become a more intimate son and daughter of the Most High? How do I go deeper with you? It's okay to do that, but if it's forcing compartmentalizations, if you will, then I think we have to go back to the drawing board and be like, well, what is our aim in being more intimate? What is our aim in being deep? My thought is, I think it's worth talking about how to integrate family into being on mission with God. Like, yes, love your kids, love them well, represent, like, there's opportunities, like, when our kids have their friendships, and when they're over to our home, like simple things we can model to them. And even when our kids, like when they're going to bed and they don't want to, so they're most talkative, like, here's some helpful nuggets, how to engage in conversation with your kid. Like, these things are touched on in small amounts, but for the most part, it's it was a marriage book that didn't really talk a lot about cultivating a sorry, someone just walked in the door, so apologies for the delay there. Um, there was much to be desired at the end of this book, and it's inspiring me, even as I talk about it, to kind of fill in some gaps, because I feel like family doesn't have to be something that's compartmentalized or split or detached from being on mission. I know a lot of us, we can't just take our kids and they're in school, they have to be grounded in some way. So for a lot of families, it's really tough to find that balance. But even when you're home, it's like you don't stop being an evangelist. You don't stop being a disciple maker. I think just one of the convictions I have is how do we integrate family, as young as they may be? I have a 2.5-year-old and a 10-month-old. How do we integrate them into the disciple-making culture that should not be outside the home? It should be inside of it, just as much outside of it. I wasn't exposed a lot to do just... I was exposed a lot to church culture, but not disciple-making culture. That's going to sound crazy for some of you, but not every season at church growing up was in a healthy environment. I was learning about Jesus. I was learning about the Word, but not really how to lead people to Him and reaching people and cultivating certain hearts, whether it's generosity, benevolence, selflessness, things along those lines, I guess. So I know I'm kind of rambling, so I need to bring this up for landing. Like when I don't have content in front of me, I could go extra long. But I guess all this to say, this book kind of charged me more than it encouraged me, and I'm curious what you guys have to think, because it's going to rub off. There is certain parts of my perspective and how it interacts with Francis' perspective that it kind of rubs like nails on a chalkboard, where I know that's not his intention. He wants to. I know as an author, I desire to position people where they can be convicted. I don't want to be the one convicting, but I certainly want to have them think like, all right, and their walk with the Lord kind of maybe level up in the Spirit, and suddenly the Spirit is speaking to them or speaking through my words. And I know Francis has that same heart. Still, though, I think moving forward, and as we get into 2019, just be ready. I think one of the topics that Liz and I are going to tackle, not just me talk, but her voice will be a part of this, literally. And we're going to talk about that because we're very passionate about linking the two. And there's not like these three camps, kind of like what's that Venn diagram where you have these different circles and they overlap in different ways, where you have being on mission with Christ and you have family, and then a little bit of mission, family, church, whatever. Like we're basically going to burst the bubbles and just like life is not meant to be compartmentalized. So life and bubble is not necessarily the right word, but just have everything flowing together in one stream and things not being so distinct, I guess. So anyway, I'll bring this in for a landing. Sorry in a way that this was so raw, but the book had some rich stuff to it, and I encourage you to take a look at it. There's an audiobook version. Go check it out. I think there's some low-cost ways to access the materials, so it's great for a Bible study. And if you have any thoughts, maybe you've already read it, like feel free to chime in below. But given that I'm already pushing 25 minutes, I'll go ahead and just, going with the the flying analogy, the pilot analogy. I'll bring this in for a landing now. So, Lord, thank you so much for all that you're doing. Thank you for the season that we're in, that we're literally, well, some of us literally, some of us it's more figurative, I suppose. We're approaching the most wonderful time of year. I guess it's more hypothetical. I just pray that as we approach and get close to that Advent time, that you will begin to lay on our hearts ways you want us to pour into people. And we thank you first and foremost for how you pour into us and what you're depositing even this moment. I pray that you'll encourage and enrich the people listening to this right now, that they will be stirred up by your Spirit for just a greater understanding of the good works you've called them to be, what they look like, what they need to be specifically in this season. I pray for boldness and strength and courage and abundance, grace and favor in their workplace, in their school place, in their home life. Teach us, Lord, how to live decompartmentalized with all the stuff going on. Lord, we want to learn together what it is to be on mission with you and the big and small things, and beginning to see the interface between the family that you've called us to and that you've blessed us with, in how to be disciple-making believers that bring others into your family. So we ask all this in your precious name. Amen. All right, guys. As I always say, peace, and we'll catch you on the fry. Talk to you soon.